Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome back for tonight's council meeting for Monday, April 11th. Thank you for joining us live or coming back to watch the recording of tonight's meeting. We are now called to order. And so at this time, I was going to turn it over to Councilmember McBride to do the opening prayer. Mr. McGrory, do you see Councilmember McBride? Is it just my view where I can't see her?
I do not.
Okay.
I can try and reach her again.
Yeah, that would be good. I will just move forward with the Pledge of Allegiance if the council doesn't mind, and then circle back. Is that okay, Councilmember Blunt, Brown, and Rout? Okay. All right. So at this time, Mr. Tonelli, we're looking at the flag over your shoulder, or either Mr. Gray, could you bring up the flag on the screen for us, please? There it is. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all so much for that. At this time, I'm just going to keep going down the agenda until Councilmember McBride is able to connect. We have the approval of tonight's agenda on here. And I just want to make sure, there was one thing from Mr. McGrory. I want to make sure it's on here. Mr. McGrory, with the LEOPS update, I think we're going to actually have to, during the discussion for the agenda, add that in here for an update that he received just before the work session. So with that, I'll ask for a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda.
I so move.
Moved by Councilmember Blunt. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Rout. Mr. McGrory did indicate he received a LEOPS update just before the work session. So would appreciate if we could just add that as item D under unfinished business. Any objections to that from the team? Okay. All right. And with that, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you all so much. And at this time, we'll move forward with the approval of the March 14th, 2022 regular meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Moved by Councilmember Brown. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Blunt. Any corrections or additions to the minutes? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you so much. At this time, the next item up is public comment. So we will turn it over to Mr. Charnovich for tonight's comments.
Yes, thank you, Mayor James. Tonight, we only have one public comment, which I'll read into the record. I'll try to read through it in 3 minutes. And it is from Bladensburg resident Valerie Pear Biggs. Dear Mayor James and Bladensburg leadership and town administration, thanks for providing Bladensburg residents an opportunity to meet with on April 7th, 2022, to discuss the proposed interim sidewalk improvements project location MD 769C Quincy Street, west of 48th Street to 52nd Street. I'm a resident of Bladensburg and my concerns are detailed below. The virtual meeting notification was shared with residents on short notice. The communication was posted on the town's website and emailed to residents on Tuesday, April 5th. The virtual meeting was scheduled for Thursday, April 7th. A leadership team that is truly vested in seeking to obtain feedback should enhance their communication strategy. Number two, the proposed concept presented did not demonstrate or create a safe, walkable community solution that encourages pedestrian activity, expand transportation options, and inviting pedestrian infrastructure that is accessible to serve residents of all ages and abilities in Bladensburg. Three, the proposed interim solution did not modify the environment to make it easier for people to walk or bike or increase physical activity. The solution included a modified asphalt walkway that is not a sidewalk. Residents need safe sidewalks, school and pedestrian crossings, and protected bike lanes. The interim solution does not resolve the infrastructure and environmental issues that exist. The proposed interim solution routes traffic into residential neighborhoods. Streets that are primarily impacted are Quincy and Newton streets. Routing traffic into neighborhoods increases risk to residents. These streets are designated as a school zone. Both areas have crosswalks for pedestrians. Increased traffic will impact walkers and biker safety. More traffic means increased air pollution and a less desirable community. The proposed interim solution has not been communicated to the industrial businesses located in the impacted by the traffic pattern changes. It is important that we collaborate with businesses that impact local economies. If we intend to be successful and want a walkable, safe community, it is imperative that we collaborate to obtain compliance. Enhanced road signage is not going to be the sole solution. In conclusion, town leadership and MDOT SHA need to revisit the proposed concept to create a long-term permanent solution that embodies safety first, pedestrian activity, expanded transportation options, and an inviting pedestrian infrastructure for Bladensburg. Examples of evolving walkable, safe community solutions in Prince George's County have been demonstrated in Hyattsville, Riverdale Park, College Park, Tacoma Park. If leadership is vested in creating a viable solution for the residents that they serve, please consider doing more research and working on an enhanced long-term solution. The interim proposed project concept is a waste of federal, state, and local funding and does not benefit the impacted areas. We are a minority community and we deserve inclusion. We deserve and expect better. Regards, Valerie Pear Biggs, Bladensburg resident. That's all this evening, Mayor. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Charnovich, for reading the public comments submitted for tonight's meeting. Again, we encourage all of our residents to take the time to submit your feedback as it's tremendously valuable. The next item on the agenda, I believe this is an item for Mr. McCrory. Again, the state legislative updates regarding the capital budget funding for town projects. So over to you, Mr. McCrory.
Thank you, council member. Included in the packet was just a description of sort of the torturous legislative path that a piece of capital budget legislation such as this takes. It goes through first reading, referral to committee, second reading, third reading, then goes to the opposite chamber, in this case, the House. Again, goes through first reading, referred to the House Appropriations Committee, second and third reading, back for review in the original chamber, and then to a conference committee if necessary, and finally to the governor. So in the at the top of the first of those pages, you can see sort of that stepwise process. And it's been kind of neat to follow this process during the legislative session as each of those little bubbles got checked with a completion thing and it moved on to the next stage. So at the end of that 3-page document, the last thing is the Senate passed and enrolled it on April 7th, and that was late last week. And so now it is sitting awaiting signature by the governor. And then there's various descriptions. We put in select pages of the several hundred pages of budget documents that referred to the Bladensburg pieces. The action item here, if any, is simply to invite the council to opine or guide staff in our recommendation that was discussed at the work session, which was to engage the services of a project manager, ideally for the case of the new capital projects. The sense is that that would be a company that would be engaged with sort of a deep bench of individuals and experts in construction processes to help guide the town through the process of engaging an architect, finalizing the plans, and supervising the construction process. And then in the specific case of Bostwick, there are already articulated specific subtasks in the application. I think there were 23 of those specific subtasks that were identified in our application to the state for Bostwick. And each of those is in the $20,000 to $50,000 range. And so it would be engaging someone with expertise in that or a company to help initiate and manage those processes through to completion, working collaboratively with the Maryland Historic Trust in compliance with the easement that exists on the historic Bostwick House. So very, very excited to have made it this far in the process. And again, I want to thank the council for your leadership and support throughout that process and your lobbying efforts in working with Senator Augustine, Delegate Fennell, and Delegate Ivy, as well as the committee chairs and other leaders in the House and Senate to get this through the process and to the governor's desk. And we're very hopeful that that process will conclude with the governor's signature and some additional funding starting July 1st. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for the recap, Mr. McGrory. And I just have to echo the sentiment of gratitude first to Senator Malcolm Augustine, who we started this process with, and then to Delegate Diana Fennell, who agreed to co-sponsor these bond bill requests. Without those two individuals, this wouldn't have gotten out of the gate. So I just, don't get me wrong, I appreciate Delegate Ivy and Delegate Juanica Fisher, but especially have to give extensive gratitude to our state senator and Delegate Diana Fennell. With that, I do want to get to the discussion that is pertaining to where the staff need a vote from the council, and that is on whether or not we are in agreement with the recommendation to secure a project manager for the construction projects that we'll be embarking upon. Want to open it up for discussion. Councilmember Brown, I see your hand.
Thank you, Mayor. Also want to thank Tony Perez as well, because he was instrumental in helping us out as well. So thanks to Tony Perez and to the staff for your diligence and hard work as well. One thing is that we have to get the governor's signature, and we can't move forward and I guess we can vote or make some recommendations, but until we get his signature, it's still kind of in limbo. But that's all I have to say.
Yes, and thank you for mentioning that, because we can very well just hold until it's inked and then agree to proceed. It sounds like just from the comments we heard in the work session, we all agree that we do need some help, but I think you're right. We don't have to jump on it necessarily at this moment. We can let that process go and not jinx anything, let it happen. And I'm sure Councilmember Brown, you can probably pick up the phone and call the governor and say, sign here, sir. So, whoever can assist with inking this so that it is truly finalized, I think it does make a lot of sense to just hold and then take the appropriate steps once we know that it has indeed been signed off by Governor Hogan. So I just want to see it. Councilmember Blunt, Councilmember McBride, Councilmember Rout, does that sound okay for you all, just to wait until we know that it's been signed off on before taking any next steps?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And so with that, we want to move on to the next item, which is voting to move the June meeting to Monday, June the 6th. We discussed that the current date conflicts with the Maryland Municipal League Conference. And so is there a motion to change the council work session as well as the council meeting for, I believe it's currently scheduled for Monday, is it June 13th? Is that right? Okay, so asking for a motion to move that to Monday, June the 6th. Both meetings, I apologize, to move both meetings.
I so moved.
Moved by Councilmember Blunt. Is there a second?
Second.
Was that Jordan? No, I'm kidding. Jordan made the second. Just kidding. Councilmember Rao, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you so much. So happy early birthday, Councilmember Rao.
Yes.
Not Monday, June 20th.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the Walkable Watershed Grant Letter of Support. Mr. McGrory, I think this is a combo. Councilmember Brown and Councilmember Rao, all three of you are on this one.
Mhm.
Yes.
I will defer to the council members if you want, other than to frame, we put in the packets the other letters from the 3 other port towns and a modified draft that had been circulated by me with input that I received during conversations with Councilmember Rout and Councilmember Brown. So it could be the draft letter that you see before you or any modifications that the council desires. And that's all I've got.
Great. Thank you, Mr. McGrory. Councilmember Rout or Brown, did you have any additional feedback for the letter? Councilmember Rout?
Thank you, Mayor James. Thank you, Mr. McGrory, for taking into the considerations, the points that I shared. And after speaking with Mr. McGrory, I feel more comfortable with the cash match that we stated that we were going to sort of put on the table as it relates to the in-kind donations as well. And Mr. McGrory did remind me that this is over the course of 2 fiscal years. And so it would be less of a hit on our budget than to have the cash be $5,000 per year over the course of 2 years to equal 10, so that we can have skin in the game. And that felt better than to just say that we were going to have $10,000 cash that we were going to match. But I did see that other municipalities are not providing cash. 2 of them are just providing support, whether it's staff time, construction costs. I did want to give that information to the council as well. So there are municipalities that in the port towns that are offering cash as well as in kind. But regardless, the organization needs a definitive dollar amount so that they could put into the grant application.
Thank you for that additional feedback, Councilmember Rout. Councilmember Brown, I want to come to you next.
Okay, yeah, just real quick, I definitely stormwater management is very important in the town of Bladensburg. Okay, because we have some problems. So, I support it. It's great. Thanks a lot. Thanks for all the hard work and all the input.
Thank you for that. And I know initially when they reached out to us, just as an example for the community who may not have been on the Walkable Watershed presentation, the whole idea is for communities like Bladensburg that are highly populated by minorities, very much impacted by watershed type issues such as us, are oftentimes in need of not just expertise, but dollars to help with walkable watershed programs. So whether it's using the Quincy Street example, the grant, and we did talk about this specific example, partnering with SHA, since we know they're doing a very long-term, expensive underground repair over there. They're putting in a permanent sidewalk on the south end of the street. Perhaps this is an opportunity to leverage the funds to partner with what SHA is proposing with an elevated, not only sidewalk, but stormwater management measures, so that we're not just putting a Band-Aid over a wound, but we're actually putting in implementation of strategies and tools to help minimize the water in that particular area. And so some of the examples fit this type of project perfectly. And also with Bostwick being a historic site that we're working to improve, it could very well go to something like that, to where the property sits up on an elevated site. And so we could use funds from this, for example, to help mitigate some of the water flow from that area as well. So those are just examples of the possibilities, but I do want to just thank the staff, Mr. McGrory and Mr. Charnovich in particular. I know you were helping Councilmember Rout and Councilmember Brown with getting this together and really thinking through what an appropriate level of commitment is. So thank you to everyone who contributed to that. We've already voted to enter into the partnership with EFC, so we don't need to go through that again. And we also agreed that we would be part of this along with the other port towns. So really this was for awareness, to make sure everyone was on board with the amount of cash contributions as well as the in-kind contributions. So with that, Councilmember Blunt and Councilmember McBride, any questions, or are you both okay? Fantastic. Okay, the next item is for Mr. McGroy to update us about LEOPS.
Thank you. Well, in your email, you have received correspondence that I received today from the state retirement system. They have at last completed their actuarial analysis of the town, and I will admit it is extremely dense reading, and goes into extensive detail. The goal of which is to assess how much it would cost the town of Bladensburg to go from the current state retirement system under its terms and parameters into the law enforcement officers pension system. I think at this point, I'd like to defer to Chief Collington for any specific questions or descriptions you have. I do want to be sensitive to the agenda, but the action item is, I received this, I requested an update this morning, and they sent back this letter that was dated April 7th. Again, it's very dense to facilitate your decision-making and the budgetary implications thereof. Two particular factors. The default financing scheme is to finance it through the state with a first payment that would be due in December of 2023. So that would be fiscal year 24. So the payment required to buy the back service for the existing employees, first of those 25 years worth of payments would not hit under that financing table they provided until next fiscal year. If the town opts to go into LEOPS this year, there would be a change to the payroll deduction for the 20 sworn police employees of a total authorized complement of 24 that we have in the town of Bladensburg at present. And so that would have a budgetary implication for next year in terms of the payroll withholding. But the significant upsides, as the prior council heard during a PowerPoint presentation last, I believe it was September, went into great detail about the benefits to law enforcement officers for recruiting, retention, and morale purposes of having the opportunity to, as many jurisdictions do, be able to retire in a set number of years rather than the standard state pension system in which you vest after 10 years and then retire with a full pension at age 65 or thereafter. So I'll defer the rest of any comments on that to the chief, but the action item for the council, we would certainly not want you in the position of acting on a significant financial matter such as this based on documents that you've just received today. However, as a follow-up, I did receive input at 5:03 by an email from the state retirement system that said they would really like to have an answer from the town by April 18th, which is next Monday. So unfortunately, we're in the position of trying to schedule a special meeting or so that we can receive the council's guidance on this before next Monday. So that concludes my summary of that, and I'll defer to the chief.
Sure, Chief Collington, and then I have a concern that with what I just heard, but over to you, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you, Mr. McGroy, for that opening presentation. I just want to say, one, that I am very, truly, abundantly grateful to the council for walking with the mayor. Walking with Mr. McGroy and staff as we journey through this process. That's very, very important to our members of the police department. And I just hope that we can continue to work cohesively and finish this project in a timely manner so that we can retain our good officers and also attract better quality officers along the way. Because right now in this open season in a lot of departments, as you guys have already heard, it's easy to, if you have good benefits, to attract good police officers. We have outstanding police officers here, and we want to continue to attract good officers to our police department. And after we invest so much into training, we don't want them to just walk away, and we have to continue to train and retrain and continue to hire. So with that, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Chief, and definitely understand and appreciate those sentiments. Mr. McRae, though, one thing that's a bit troublesome is it's taken several months for us to get this information. So I just want to make sure I heard that date right. That's Monday, April 18th is when we have to have made a decision and report it back to them. Is that?
Hang on, sorry, I had to unmute. I was just literally pulling up the email because I don't want to misquote. Nope, actually, this was the email that I got at 10:51 this morning. Yes, but it is my belief, I will look and confirm that by the end of the meeting, but it's my belief that the requested date for a decision is April 18th.
All right, so I guess we'll have to touch base and get your help with gauging the availability of council. I know some are on spring break this week. We have Good Friday, Easter holiday, and some things going on. So we'll do our best to, be as flexible as we can to get something on the calendar right away. But thank you for that update. I'm glad they finally got the numbers back. I mean, we've been waiting for months and months and months and months. So it almost made it feel like they forgot about us. So that is good news. We're moving. Any further questions from the council on the LEOPS update? Okay. The next item takes us to financial business. The first one being budget matters, the FY 2022 merit increases.
Thank you, Mayor. And effectively, we're going to lump these first two items together. As I mentioned at the work session, the merit increases, the reason to have this on the agenda was simply to inventory that there will be merit increases applied for those eligible employees who were employed with the town as of July 1st and continue to be employed as of today, and are still on the scale that was approved by the council back in January. So those employees will be getting their merit increases retroactively, and that'll show as a marginal increase in the fourth quarter of fiscal year 22, our current fiscal year. So I just wanted to put that in play to sort of frame the budget discussion. And at this point, and to kick off the budget discussion, I think the first order of business is to describe a little bit about our intentions or a possible model for spending under the American Rescue Plan Act. And so I'm going to share my screen at this time and just sort of talk you through. Is everybody seeing that?
Yes.
The ARPA spreadsheet? Okay. So you may recall, and I'm starting down here at the bottom of the total for fiscal year 22, that's our current fiscal year. The town council had approved a budget amendment to pull in $350,000 of the total of $4,933,971 into the current fiscal year. Subsequent to doing that, you authorized pandemic bonuses for staff to the tune of $97,000. And we did, in the documents that were submitted in support of our capital funding from the state, give a statement of intent that the town would budget $100,000 towards the municipal center. Now, those documents were submitted by staff and approved by the council after the fact, and they did not specify which bucket of money they would come from, whether from reserves or from ARPA, but they are ARPA eligible. And council may recall that the American Rescue Plan initially had a number of constraints. There were only 7 spending categories from which funds could be drawn. And subsequently, the federal government revised their guidance on that and said that for the purposes of ARPA spending, if a jurisdiction received $10 million or less, and we fall in that category, then there were only very general restrictions. And one of those is that it couldn't be used to fund pension activities. And it also couldn't be used to fund a tax rate reduction. So with the rest of those conditions largely removed, we find ourselves trying to itemize sort of the existing commitments and to put in place things that the council had not specified into a spending framework for the coming fiscal years. And so I wanted to sort of lay out how this could look. And this is not approved by the council. It's marked here clearly as a draft. So it's just talking points to sort of get from here. We have spent $97,000 so far. We have intentions to spend this year of another $100,000. There is the possibility of using this to fund the initial payment for ShotSpotter, for example. And then that leaves $128,000 uncommitted for the current fiscal year of that total of $350,000. So these highlighted ones with the sort of beige highlighting are things where the council has expressed an intent to spend money in the long term in the documents that it submitted to the state in support of its budget request from the state. So for the Bostwick restoration, the town indicated that it intended to spend $150,000 in fiscal 23, $175,000 in fiscal 24, and $50,000 in fiscal 25. Those were intended as kind of triage funds with the $500,000 we're receiving from the state and $50,000 from the Amen Trust to stabilize the structure and kind of address some of the major challenges with the structure and do some long-range planning for what we might do with the facility. So that's the three highlighted fields for the Bostwick and our commitments for that. Of course, the staff submittal can't bind future councils to actually allocate those funds, but that is a statement of good faith. And nor did the council specify that that should be taken out of American Rescue Plan funding. With the municipal center, we did indicate in our documents submitted to the state that we would budget $100,000 this year, $500,000 next year, and $500,000 in fiscal 24, with the presumption that the $500,000 coming from the state would be expended during that time. And the remaining, this last number here, this 1.9 million, is really a catch-all. When you add up all these totals over the fiscal years for which ARPA spending can be deployed, anything that was left unspent, because we know the total cost of the municipal building. Sorry, I've got your faces in the way here. I have to move that around. So we know that the total cost of a new municipal facility is going to be well above the $3.5 million for the total project. So here we see we have $500,000 from the state, assuming the governor's signature, and we have $500,000 from the state for Bostwick. So we've anticipated that any additional uncommitted ARPA funding that isn't used for some other resource would presumably get used here in fiscal 25 to complete the municipal building. Obviously, we're going to have to finance at least another $4 to $6 million or more to complete the structure, given the cost estimates we've received from the initial pass from the architects and engineers who advised the town previously on this. So this, the layout of this document was simply intended to show how this could pan out. And then the town in the submittal for the Federal Job Training Center, for the Trades Job Training Center that was submitted to the federal government, indicated the town would pay 10 to 20% of the cost of that. And the town received an allocation of $1 million from the federal earmark, or so-called directed spending. So the total cost of the projects here are just our penciled in statements of intent thus far. So nothing else on here is committed. We did anticipate that we would hire staff through ARPA funding to help manage these programs. And if, as we've described, much of this ARPA money is going to go to capital projects, including the new town hall, the Bostwick restoration, and the Federal Job Training Center, then this is one of the options for funding those positions that we just described earlier, including the ARPA grant position that had been approved previously. I believe that was back in September, October, somewhere in that time frame. So again, those highlighted areas are things that the town has tacitly committed to. This last one here, and this is a preview of coming attractions. When we talk about the fiscal year 23 budget in the immediately following discussion, we have put in a pandemic inflation adjustment. So inflation is currently running at 7.9%. That's the annualized inflation rate as of last month. And that is eroding the value of staff salaries and purchasing power across the board. So you'll see inflation adjustments throughout the municipal budget for the fiscal year 23 budget that's being proposed. Our belief is, my belief, at least I'll frame it that way, is that the sudden burst of inflation is largely attributable to the pandemic. That the pandemic hit and immediately there was large-scale joblessness, severe disruptions to the macroeconomy. This was an international effect, and the government, federal government, took steps, as did the state government, to launch a massive infusion of capital into the economy, partly to help individuals pay their bills through tax rebates or incentives for individuals, and also to businesses, et cetera. So if that reasoning is to be believed and is agreed with by the council, then this one-time cost of that 7.9% inflation adjustment that would be applied to the pay scales could be funded out of the ARPA funding. Again, that's not a commitment. That's just a fundamental statement of belief as one among the options that you could use for spending that money. So again, just playing this out through the course of the fiscal years, ShotSpotter that the town authorized does have an annual cost. And just framing this out, if we paid the first half of the roughly $50,000 a year cost in fiscal 22, the second half and the next year's cost of 25 plus 50 in fiscal 23, and then 50,000 in the remaining eligible out years, we could pay for that entire 300,000 and thereby have multiple years of ShotSpotter service. Now that doesn't presuppose that council must fund it this way in the future, but it's simply an option to show how that could add up to deplete this total of $5 million. And at the end of that time, if you said we've done this experiment with ShotSpotter and the council could reevaluate with the absence of the ARPA funding, is this a cost that we want to take on to the general fund budget or not? Similarly, the ARPA funded staff, you would anticipate those staff will expire. There's a rough inflation, an anticipated inflation adjustment in here, and then half a year's salary. The remaining funding, all of the ARPA funding must be spent by midway through fiscal year 27. That is December 31st, 2026. So we've anticipated this as a half year cost only. So with this matrix created, it's just there as a talking point for you. There's still uncommitted funding in the first year. There's this residual balance in the second year, and you may or may not decide, excuse me, that these are your spending priorities for the future. But I just wanted to lay this all out. Excuse me, as a reminder, the council went through these discussions with staff and with the residents and with businesses. We had public outreach meetings to solicit input, and there were many, many fabulous ideas for how to spend this money. But given that, as you'll see in the current year budget and the proposed fiscal year 23 budget, we do have these significant financial commitments that have been made and are anticipated that are new additions. This spending model could be the model that the council adopts for the future for its ARPA spending. And you could at any time swap in and out various priorities from among those other options. But this was again put together after those public meetings happened before the rules changes that enabled a much more broad approach to general government spending than was in those specific categories. So I think I'm going to conclude the ARPA piece there, and I can pause for questions if the council wishes, or I can move right into the proposed fiscal 23 budget.
So I see one hand before I go to council member route. I will comment one, thank you for putting this together, but also stressing it is draft, because I appreciate the intent here, but do feel strongly that we need to a greater extent incorporate some of the feedback from staff and resident program recommendations so that the majority or some percentage of it that's greater than what we're seeing here is reflected in those, because we asked for their input and ideas on some specific things, and I want to make sure that we're sensitive to that feedback. Councilmember Rout, I see your hand.
Thank you, Mayor James. I totally support the comments that you just made, and I do appreciate the time that staff made. But my concern is that we heard significant concerns from our residents as it relates to their needs as a COVID response. As we are still in COVID, we still have the need for masks. We still have the need for tests. I do not see that reflected on this American Rescue Plan spending plan. And so I do appreciate the opportunity to being able to swap things out. But I do think that we need to take a deeper look at, as a council, to see what are some of the themes that we saw as the needs. Mental health is a need. So whether that's having more awareness, mental health awareness fairs, just like as I had talked about in the work session, bringing to the town, bringing mental health staff on, preparing our residents with safety mechanisms such as masks and test kits. I do think that we need to balance this ARPA spending plan a little bit more with some of the things that our residents have need, because this is heavy on what staff and what we need to move the town forward. And I do think that businesses and what their needs were as it relates to specific grants, as they had shared during their listening session. So I would like for us to really consider an equal across the board approach to be able to incorporate everyone's ideas.
Thank you, Councilmember Rout. And so let me just scroll, sorry, my view changed, Mr. McGrory, when you started. Okay, Councilmember Blunt, I see you now. Sorry, you weren't on the initial queue. Go ahead, please.
I don't know how to raise the hand. I'm still back in the day. But so where are we on hiring someone to the opera person, Mr. McGrory?
Yeah, so we had put the advertisement out. There was not a robust applicant pool, to say the least. We are still open to doing that. Again, that was a very specific full-time position that was envisioned with specific credentials and capabilities. I'm certainly open, as we talked about recently in sort of the project management category, to considering other alternatives. I know some of our neighboring jurisdictions have hired part-time or consulting firms to perform this task. So I'm certainly open to exploring whatever options there are, but our effort was to implement the council's specific task, which was the job description that was approved. But we can certainly revisit that notion. And again, with the rule changes having taken place subsequent to the adoption of that job description, the adherence, the amount of compliance effort that will be made trying to shoehorn whatever programs are funded with ARPA money into those 7 specific funding areas are no longer the case. So kind of the ground has moved under our feet with regard to, that's not to say we don't need that staff person helping us deploy these funds appropriately, but we don't need them to specifically spend significant time evaluating whether the programs fully comply with those 7 funding areas, if that makes sense.
But you did say other people are using contractors, or maybe you can explore, maybe use some of them and see what happens. Just to have another eye, that's all.
Agreed. Yeah, if that can be expanded a bit, I think Councilmember Blunt is correct. We need to be creative and not compromise on what our expectations are. There's somebody out there, there's the right solution. So we just may have to get a little more creative with how we're trying to get them. So Mr. McGrory, so you had 15 minutes here and you're past 15 minutes. So do you, yep. And Mr. Charnovich, I see your note. But the budget session calendar is important because we need to make sure that we're all able to be there. So I'm going to be a little graceful and give you a little more time because we've got to get into this. So back to you. Bob, you're muted.
I had a lovely conversation with myself.
There you go.
Thank
You're
you.
back.
I can't believe, is that a vote to approve the budget? I think I'm done. Thank you for pointing out my unmutedness or my mutedness. So this is the official presentation of the budget. And let me just preface this by saying the ARPA thing that you just saw was wholly put together by me as a roadmap of what could be. It is absolutely draft form, and the staff had limited to no input into that. So it was just a framework, because on Friday it became apparent to me that we should have a larger framework for this, since that funding goes over multiple fiscal years. With that said, I will dive through briefly to just focus on the high points. So the fiscal year 22 budget was for $7 million of revenue. And down here, again, I'm trying to work around your faces on my screen, which maybe I can shove off to the side here. But it also
Bob,
shows.
I'm sorry, Mr. McGrory, if you just grab the top of the box and slide it over, if you have multiple screens, it will disappear. So that way you can have the whole view.
Okay.
Let
How's
me
that?
know if that works.
Yep. Okay. So the current fiscal year budget is $7,005,000. We are on pace to expend about 90% of that, which is a good thing, because in these expenditures, we anticipated transfer from fund balance of about $500,000. So just in as much as that frames the proposed budget for next year, we are anticipating revenues of $8,400,000. And that includes the asset input of $1.3 million from the ARPA. So just understand that that is a carryover from the spreadsheet you were just looking at, that is in the highly draft format. It is absolutely without the council's input, other than your validation of those capital matches for Bostwick and for the municipal building. So with that said, if you reduce these, reduce the amount of federal funding you put in, or you reallocate that, that number is going to change, and that'll infuse among different departments throughout the budget. But this is a balanced budget that shows total revenues of $8.4 million. It does anticipate a transfer from fund balance of $710,000. But again, as we anticipate for the current fiscal year, our hope is that we will not need that transfer. The town's practice has been to budget fairly conservatively, and that practice is continued in the current fiscal year. So here is a little window of the revenues. 48% of the revenue comes from real estate taxes. The next largest components is anticipated as transfer from fund balance at 9%, and business personal property taxes at 9%. Income taxes, a large portion at 7%. And then, of course, that significant federal funding at 16%. The remaining amounts are all fairly modest and are explicated on the revenue sheet that follows. So here's the detail of the revenues. Again, this went through the constant yield process and looked at this number. The anticipated, or the total value of properties in town for the next fiscal year, is $546 million times the current tax rate of 74, gives you this $4 million influx of revenue, and that is the largest component of revenue. I'm going to defer the rest of the discussion of revenue for the budget work sessions that have already been scheduled, or that will be hopefully approved. And then these are the department budgets. Public safety incorporates 59% of the overall budget of the town. Public works, 12%. The ARPA budget, as we mentioned, the capital portion of the ARPA budget is $975,000 of that $1.3 million. The rest of it, the shot spotter piece, is shown over as a operating expense on the public safety side, for example, and the anticipation of the COLA, the cost of living adjustment of 7.9%, is diffused among these salary departments. So that is also an operational issue rather than a capital one. And the administration department is showing at 12% as well. Moving to the specific budgets, again, during the budget work sessions, we will go through these and talk about individual line items. But the increase here of roughly 8% is in line with the inflation rate that I just described as informing the COLA. And hang on a second. Okay, so, and I've got just a couple more pages to get through here. The administration budget shown here. These segments have been combined for the administration budget, the town administrator's budget, the town clerk budget, and the treasurer's budget in a general category of administration. This is something I've talked about several times as a matter of operational efficiency, that it enables us to treat these budgets as one unit, and which is in effect how we perform our jobs. The town hall unit, in contrast with the legislative function of the mayor and council, and the police department and the public works department. Public safety department. Again, there are some adjustments there that we'll cover in the scheduled work session for public safety to go through this in detail. You can see that as part of the capital budget, there have been some increases there. The police department, for example, their outlay includes all the fuel costs for public safety vehicles, and those fuel costs have gone up significantly. So there's a 25% increment there. In addition, we've anticipated 4 police vehicles and 9 police radios to be acquired as the capital portion of the police budget. Public Works anticipates a capital portion for street repairs and shows a 5% increase. And I believe that is all we've got time for at the moment. So that concludes the budget presentation on the first pass. And I think a key detail of the budget discussion is to talk about the work sessions. We had proposed at the last council meeting having the next work session on April 20th, and then the following one on April 26th. And so those dates are included in your budget calendars. And if the council wants to ratify one or both of those dates, staff will be guided to thereby attend and discuss in some detail the budget that's just been presented. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that overview, Mr. McGrory. I know I was taking notes and look forward to diving into every single line item, as we always do. So in looking at the attachment with the draft schedule, the April 20th budget work session is scheduled for 5:30 p.m. currently. Just want to make sure that still works for everyone, because we compared calendars and it's been a while ago. And then, as was also mentioned, we also had the April 26th as the second budget work session at 5:30 p.m. So if there's a change in your schedule, could you please just let Mr. McGrory know so we can work to get a new date scheduled and get plenty of notice out to our residents, because we do want them tuning in. Any questions or comments from the council on the budget presentation from Mr. McGrory? I think we're all at the same point, Mr. McGrory. We're ready to roll up our sleeves and dive into the numbers. So with that, it completes our financial business for tonight. We are moving on to new business, and the first item on the agenda is Legit's Board of Trustees ballot. Mr. McGrory, would you like to take that one?
Sure, council member, mayor and council, there are 4 candidates for election to 4 seats, and I think all the council need do is make a motion to direct staff to check yay next to all those 4 boxes unless the council wants to do something different, in which case you could consider a closed session. And again, the local government insurance trust is owned and operated by its municipal and county constituents. We choose the board of directors, and it provides insurance solely to local governments. Thank you.
Thank you for that overview, Mr. McGrory. And as we discussed in the work session of a few hours ago now, there are a couple of candidates on here who have strong financial and insurance experience and backgrounds. And in addition to that, happy to see a local representative on here who can speak to the needs of smaller municipalities such as Bladensburg as they're advising legit on matters as the Board of Trustees. So with that, I'll call for a motion to approve the 4 candidates listed on our ballot box. Oh, sorry, Councilmember Rod, I just looked up and saw your hand. Go ahead, please. Let me hold on the motion.
No, I so move.
Oh,
Trying to
okay.
be called on. So move.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember Blunt. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye.
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 Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you all so much. So Mr. McGrory, we'll lean on you to get this submitted and returned back to the email provided on the ballot, or Mr. Chernovich, whoever you designate. Next, we will move on to Resolution 01-20222. I had asked Mr. McGrory to place this on tonight's agenda because anyone who's seen the news over the last 5 to 6 weeks, it's hard for your heart not to be pricked by the conflict going on in Ukraine right now, as they were invaded by Russia. And during the Maryland Mayor's Conference a week and a half ago, we did pass the resolution that was shared with the town council to show solidarity with those residents. And I believe everyone also received the resolution that was passed by the town of Colmar Manor. And so while this doesn't go that far, when you're looking at your language, you do have to be careful. If you're saying, please come here, we welcome you, I think you have to have the resources to provide for those individuals, and that you have to be very sensitive to that. And so just wanted to put this before the council for consideration, that we would pass this resolution. And the reason I kind of tear up is Council Member Irina Hobbs, her sister and nephew are in Ukraine, and she's in Colmar Manor, of course, and having a very, very difficult time trying to get them out of the country. Of course, the male relatives are not allowed to leave because they have to stay and fight this war. And so when you know people impacted, it's hard to just look away and think, oh, this is happening thousands of miles away. But it's affecting people right here. And in fact, one of the mayors from Port Tobacco, Maryland, while he's Polish American, he's got relatives who are there in Poland who are trying to help some of the evacuees. So it's just so many people are being impacted, and just wanted to ask the council if they would consider the resolution. Mr. Chernovich, would you mind reading it out loud for the benefit of the public, please?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. And as a Polish American myself, I would say that I'm very proud of my country and what we are doing to help those in Ukraine right now. It's very powerful to see. Thank you for your words there. We have a resolution of the town of Bladensburg. Be it resolved on this 11th day of April 2022 by action of the council of the town of Bladensburg, the mayor and council state and proclaim the following. Whereas the town of Bladensburg, a municipal government located in Prince George's County, Maryland, believes in peace, harmony, and nonviolent conflict resolution, which actions are practiced daily in the Bladensburg community. And whereas the town of Bladensburg believes in home rule authority by which the residents of areas delineated as autonomous political subdivisions elect their own representatives, create their own laws, and fashion their community values and standards pursuant to the wishes and desires of its residents through an open, fair, and democratic process. And whereas the town of Bladensburg hereby denounces the war initiated by Russia against Ukraine as contrary to the beliefs and standards expressed above, as it is a violation of the peace, harmony, and self-governing autonomy of the people of Ukraine. And whereas these ruthless and reprehensible actions taken by Russia are a threat to the independent sovereignty of all governments and should be denounced in the strongest fashion. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the mayor and council of Bladensburg unequivocally support peaceful and non-violent means to resolve conflicts and also believe in an autonomous political subdivision having the right to home rule authority. And resolution. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much for reading that aloud for everyone's hearing. At this time, I'll call for a motion to adopt resolution as read.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Rout. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Brown. Want to open it up for discussion. Yes, Councilmember Rout.
Yes, this is very, very important. I don't know if the town council realizes that we had Prince Georgians that had Bladensburg ties. There was a young man who played professional basketball in Ukraine, and he was actually stuck in Ukraine when the war started to break out. And so there are Americans that are still stuck over there that have Prince George's ties and Bladensburg ties. And this is just senseless violence that did not have to take place. And the mere fact that individuals are stranded and they are having to defend somewhere where democracy lived and enacted is just brings chills to my spine. In addition, I was part of a group that worked to get that young man back, and that was working with our state representatives in the Senate and in the House of Representatives and the State Department to really preserve life. And at this time, when he got back, this young man got back, 2 days after he got back, the town by which he lived was demolished. I mean, so this is real. And I just, I pray for them always. And I pray for the young people the children that are affected. And for the Americans that are still stuck there, because this is very traumatic. And we talk about mental health and mental wellness. They do have PTSD, some of them. So we should just pray for peace and pray for comfort for all that are affected. I yield.
Thank you, Councilmember Rout. And so with that, seeing no further hands, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye.
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 Aye. Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you all so much. Next item on the agenda is the Mental Health Awareness Day. Councilmember Rout, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mayor James. As I shared in the work session last year, we had our first mental health awareness event, My Peace mental health awareness event, where we had an outdoor wellness event. We had some fun, but really the purpose of the event was to bring active resources, speakers, experts on mental health and mental wellness to our town of Bladensburg. It could have been better attended because we had 3 rain dates, but we had actual people enroll in services on site and save their life. And mental health is plaguing our town, our county, our state at an egregious rate. Children, our young people have been affected, and in minority communities, mental health and mental wellness has been shunned upon because that has not been well accepted culturally. And so this event is to really bring forth the opportunity to raise the flag on what is mental health, what is mental wellness. I wanted to be able to provide resources, not just little papers that people can take away, but you can enroll on site. You can get help right there. So last year we had jujitsu demonstrations. We had a maternal health speaker. We had nice decorations, and it was a serious opportunity, but it also had a little flavor of fun. And so at our budget session last year, we did have a vote in the affirmative to have $5,000 to expend on this event. And so I would like for the town council to approve that amount that was budgeted for, so that, and then we can all collaborate and work together for the second Saturday of May to have this event in our town park, and we can have our rain date already on our flyer so that we're not, trying to run around and find our rain date. But to bring mental health support to our town is very, it's needed. We've had lots of mental health tragic events that have happened throughout COVID. And I think this is something that we can all collaborate on to make sure that these resources are well spent. And so I'm just asking for your support with the budgeted item of our mayor and town council budget.
Thank you, Councilmember Rout, for that overview. Any comments or questions from the town council? Councilmember Blunt?
Okay, yeah, again, that was an excellent program that you put together with the services, and I will support you this year as well I'll help you and I'll support you with the program because it is needed. It is needed.
Thank you, Councilmember Blunt. Councilmember Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, thanks, Councilmember Rout. As I said before, definitely mental wellness is very, very important. And especially, not even especially, but even more so, particularly in light of COVID and the war that's going on. So it's definitely needed. In terms of is there a budget that has already been set, or is that what we're going to discuss as part of our when we go into our budget discussions?
Mayor James, may I respond?
So if I can jump in, Councilmember Brown, when we approve the budget, we have a line item for council events, and I don't want to get the line item wrong. Council, it is 6230 on the detail of the mayor and council budget. So for this year, because we weren't sure about the fireworks, when we were going through the process last year, we put that in here, I believe, and then it was also inclusive of events like this. So any events we held the year prior was just to make sure there was enough to compensate or cover those line items. Councilmember Rout, I know you had your hand up too.
Thank you, Mayor James. So yes, on Councilmember Brown, it was already budgeted for. I just wanted to get the current town council support with it by the affirmative vote of the dollar amount that was set, just so that there are new members on the council. And I just wanted for this to be not just, for this to be our event, and we can collectively put together because our residents, they could benefit. And, it's not just going to be, just me planning. Last year, we encompassed all of the departments to really because it was COVID, we had to, really do a lot. So, but I wanted to get the town council support fiscally as it relates to this year, even though it was put in the budget last year as an operation of good faith.
And I will say, because I did have the opportunity to attend, and I think that it was an important event to have, but just I think the $5,000 is too high for an event of this nature because of the relationships that you have, Councilmember Rout, and others on the town council and staff. As you said in the work session, I think we can better leverage the county resources that are available and some of the private organizations to offer their expertise, their support, and even some swag to distribute at this event. So my recommendation would be something more in line with other events like $1,500 or $2,000, knowing that we can get other organizations to donate or just partner with us and pitch in, because this isn't a Bladensburg issue. As you said, so many people are being impacted. And so perhaps we can get school resources so they can address the young people and just really expand it even far beyond the awesome event that you had next year. So that would be my recommendation, is just to bring that dollar amount down a little bit more so we can leverage our programs better.
Mayor James, may I respond?
Absolutely, yes.
So a lot of the budget last year was for COVID precautions like signage and things of that nature that was used. We had mailings. And so a lot of the budget was used for that last year so that we had an EDDM. So that was a large portion of the budget. So if we are going to be reducing that down, we will solely be relying on our methods, the methods that we have used in the past. And so if we crunch, like if we look at what we expended, a lot of it was postage and printing and things of that nature. So to pivot for a reduction, I feel like the residents would be losing out because we had already established kind of what this would look like. And so as an operation of good faith, I would just request that the town council currently seated keep it at the same dollar amount of $5,000, as similar events for like the senior event was $5,000. And so that is a similar event.
Yeah, yes, thank you. And I did request the breakdown just so I can make sure that I had the numbers on this. And you're right, the EDBM was a high expense, but there was also $1,600 for t-shirts. And then there were also payments to individuals, I believe, who did presentations. And again, this isn't something we would normally do for Port Towns Day or other town events. We just get our partners to come and talk. We don't have to pay them. So I think if we are creative, we could bring the line item down. But I will, let's just see if it passes with the council, as you said. So is there a motion to approve holding this year's Mental Health Awareness Day, My Peace, and budgeting $5,000 for this event? Is there a motion?
I so moved.
Moved by Councilmember Blunt. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Rout. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mayor James.
Sure.
I would not like to name it My Peace Mental Health Awareness Day. It'll just be the Town of Bladensburg Mental Health Awareness Day because it is proprietary and that individual is on medical leave at this time. And so I would not want to use that individual's proprietary information. So I would like to request to amend your motion of amendment to move that the town council supports the Bladensburg Mental Health Awareness Day by funding this at the rate of $5,000 as budgeted last in our budget session.
Thank you for that clarification. You're right. I don't want to make that mistake if the person is not a part this year. That is serious. Any further comments or questions? If not, I'll go to the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Nay.
No, no nays, but I did have a comment. I'm
Oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand.
You know what? Because I'm like, I was trying to get there. And I think it's great. And I think, because I know that the EDDM with the mailers and those types of things, that they're very important. And if the $5,000 line item is there, I think, we can, just, if we can, just try to look at some creative ways. If we don't have to spend all the $5,000 and we can get some partners to come in and get some collaborations and stuff like that. But it's definitely, definitely do support it.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councilmember Brown. Because you're right. For example, I remember seeing boxes of T-shirts after the event. So we don't need that same level of funding. That's my thought. Some things are probably left over that we can repurpose for this year. So that's why I was thinking we could make it more in line, given the resources and the outlay of funds, because again, 5,000 was expended, but in looking at the detail,
But you also have to think, Mayor James, this event was moved 3 times because of the weather. And so we anticipated 200 people coming to have those 200 shirts. And the great thing about it is that the shirts didn't have a year on it. So it can be repurposed, but it's proprietary. So I don't want to use those same, shirts. But that's why I said I'm open to working with our town council on really reconfiguring and working with you all to make sure that we're not duplicating something. But I do think that if there is something that, we want to be able to spend our money on as it relates to a wellness activity, that was something that can be good. I mean, I think we did great for it to be 3 times moved. And for it to be well attended, we can't control the weather, and we were looking at the safety. And so those shirts would have been handed out if we did not probably move it 3 times. I mean, it was moved 3 times.
Right. And what's the date again?
I'm looking at the
she said
second
May
Saturday
14th
of May.
May 14th?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, May 14th.
Great. Thank you so much. So the next item.
So did the motion carry?
It did carry, yes. Actually, Councilmember McBride, I heard 3 nays. Were you, I'm sorry, 3 ayes, but I didn't hear Councilmember McBride. If you want to put it in the chat, we can't seem to hear your audio. But regardless, even if it's 3-1, the motion carries. The next item is the Port Towns bus purchase. This is, I believe, a combination of Mr. McGrory and Councilmember Blunt.
Again, I know we talked about another form of transportation, well, actually 2 other types of transportation opposed to buying a bus. And again, do we have to table that today, or can we first get together and talk about it and then table that bus purchase? Because I just found out about the bus purchase. So if it's other avenues that we can use, I'm open to it, but I just want to have some type of transportation for the seniors. So I'm open to it. I don't want not to have anything, because I was there when they first started the transportation along with your husband, and to take that from them. We know they love it. We know they love it. So at the end of the day, let's look into it. I really want to buy the bus. Trust me, I want that bus. But again, I know with that, it comes responsibility. And thank you, Bob,
and we're not taking
so
anything
much
away from the seniors.
I know, but trust me, I'll be right there on you. I know that.
Well, you wouldn't be there on me because definitely as long as I've been in Bladensburg, and I think I can say this for all the council members. I mean, we do care about all of our residents, from our youth to our middle age to our senior citizens. So that's just not. And
it's not just for the seniors. That's the misconception. It's not for the seniors. Yeah. It's for anyone who wants to ride.
I know, but you just keep referencing seniors, and you're not going to take it away.
I mean, because I'm always do that first.
I know, because you work right. Absolutely.
I mean, it's okay. But Bob, if you want to finish up, you can.
Well, thank you. Yeah, our understanding is the town of University Park would like to move this off its books. So they had asked for, I received this shortly after your last council meeting, and they said the town of Colmore Manor has a council meeting tomorrow night. So the hope was, in order to get University Park an answer, and since you only meet monthly, that if the town council could make a decision tonight and then convey that guidance to the town of Colmore Manor, then they could move forward. I did email an amendment to my recommended motion. I put in the council packets a motion that would authorize the staff to move forward with this. And I just emailed a revision to that. If the council is interested in considering that variation. Again, if you empower the staff, we could use ARPA funding for this. This is a capital project and a one-time investment. I mean, it's obviously a periodic investment, but if we're replacing a 2003 with a 2015, that's a 12-year shelf life we might anticipate, and that's seems like a positive thing. But the council could authorize up to a set amount and empower staff to go look at it and kick the tires. You might say, hey, University Park, why don't you go take it and get it inspected, and we'll reduce the cost by whatever it costs us to get it through inspection, something like that. But we're happy to move forward with it if the council wishes, and do whatever the council directs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGrory, for the additional background there. And I do see the note that you sent between the meetings about the motion modification. I think where we left it, though, in the work session was we do want to continue to offer this service to our residents, and we understand the need for it. However, there wasn't clear consensus that purchasing a 2015 bus would be best, and there's some other options that we should look into. And not that we have to take a long time to do it, but Councilmember Rout mentioned the Lyft and Uber option. Is that something that we can quickly get information on to say to our residents, we've exhausted our budget? That's a reality we cannot change. The line item that was put there is gone. And part of the reason we burned through it in 3 quarters and not 4 is because of the cost, of those bills. And so we have to recognize that we've already overspent in that line item. I think it says now by 140%. So if the council is open to saying, to get us through this next quarter, for example, we want to try the Uber and Lyft discount code and cap it at X dollar amount, I think that's something that we should talk about. I also think we need to leverage our Bladensburg businesses. Part of our procurement policy is that giving priority to Bladensburg residents to support our local small businesses. And there's 2 transportation companies I can think of off the top of my head that we could probably put an RFP out to let them know this is the type of service we want. They're right here in town, so it's not like we're getting them from Fairfax or someplace that's far. They're right here, and we can work with them and Councilmember Blunt to say, we want to establish a schedule. We want to be able to offer the bus on, maybe it's 3 days a week, or even if it's 5 days a week from this time to this time. And maybe we lean on Councilmember Blunt's expertise to say, this is where it's going Monday, this is where it's going Tuesday.
Right.
And the first number of people to sign up by X date for the following week, that's who we're booking transportation for. And at least we're only on the hook for the exact number of rides that are being administered versus overhead of salary, fringe, insurance for the driver, insurance for the vehicle. And then heaven forbid, if that vehicle is struck in an accident, what happens then? So we're transferring all of that risk to a professional transportation company, again, who's right here in our own community, that we're supporting them. They're helping us provide services, again, not just to our precious seniors, but to any residents who are in need for that service. So I think we have some great options that the council shared, and we should just say in the next week, we need to figure this out and come back to the community to say, this is how we're going to move forward. Councilmember Rout, I'll come to you, and then Councilmember Brown, I'll come to you next.
Thank you, Mayor James. Not only do we have a procurement policy, but we should be thinking about being green and to expending a bus that is not even half filled on multiple trips during the week, when there are lesser options like a van or an individual car service or things like that. We need to consider that as well, because I'm not too sure that a bus is our option. In addition, I mean, a bus is nice, but do we really need that? I think that if we are taking trips, we could, you know, as a town council, elect to have a, a, a engagement or outreach and engagement line item that we will be taking, you know, trip. Is that what we're doing as a government? If that's the pleasure, then that's what we say we're going to do. But we have bus companies that we could do this with, and I don't think the answer to our problem right now is just go buy a bus, because we still have to be able to drive that bus. And also that bus, even though it's, you know, it's not a 2020, so we're going to be right in this situation for sustainability purposes in another 8 years. And so I just think we need to look at all of our options and lay them all out so that we could make the best decision. Thanks. You're back.
Thank you. Councilmember Brown.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Councilmember Blunt and Councilmember Marilyn. You know, I think, I mean, we definitely all want to achieve the same goal, and that is to provide transportation. So there, and I think it's good that we have different vehicles or different options that we can look at in providing transportation. And you know, I want to know, just, you know, from I guess from January through to now, you know, how many residents, you know, really utilize the transportation. But I do know, in light of with them kind of loosening with COVID, I'm sure that ridership may go up, increase in the upcoming months. So I think having the option is kind of just reiterating some of what has already been said. Having the option of with the Uber Lyft scenario, or with one of with the two of the tour bus companies in the town, they have different size vehicles, and we don't have that responsibility of the insurance, of the maintenance operation, whether the wheelchair lifters, you know, and we will be providing a quality service to our town residents. So yeah, but we already have vehicles sitting on the parking lot, you know, that are not used regularly. So just to have another vehicle to sit and go out, you know, 1 or 2 days, something like that, a week. I just think we should look at the other options, look at the other costs, and not be so hasty to make a decision tonight to say that we're gonna just buy a bus.
Well, I know we went over time. Sorry, Rich, but we didn't know COVID would exist. But when you talk about I'm only talking Emerson House and Newton Green at this time. They use the bus 24/7.
Yeah,
but remember, but the community don't know about the bus, that they can use the bus. But once the community knows that they can use this bus, if the ridership will go up. So to say that to have a bus sitting, I promise you that bus would not be sitting if we ran right. But again, we're gonna look at the other options, the Uber, the Lyft, and also the other companies in town of Bladensburg. But to say that, anyway.
And Councilmember Blunt, the other thing to consider too is this gives us a chance to really figure out what our needs are, because it was 4 towns and then it was down to 2. But if we're doing something just for our residents and we come back and find, you know what, Councilmember Blunt was right, and it's time to proceed and do a Bladensburg bus only for our residents, we can make that call. I tried that when I first got in office and we had the money in there, but then other things kept coming up and then there wasn't much of an appetite for it. But we're in a different place, like you said now. So I do think we have to be flexible, but let's open up the possibilities to other things and help you to, you know, help everyone here on the call provide these services. But we are past time, so I do want to proceed because it's already 8:30 to the staff reports. And the first one that we have tonight is the treasurer report. So over to you, Mr. Tonelli.
Hello, Mayor, if you want, I mean, I went ahead and have a full report here listed, so we can go ahead and defer my report if you want to, since we will be getting into this with the budget discussion, because these third quarter numbers through March are going to be discussed again in the budget work session. So if that's okay, that's the, or I can go through it, I can always go through it, but.
I think you're right. If we could defer it to the work session so we can actually not rush through it. And it'll also give the council more time to dive into some of the questions, especially as we start looking toward budget forecasting and planning for the next fiscal year. That's my recommendation, but to the council, rest of the team, is that okay with you all, or did you have a preference to hear from Mr. Tonelli tonight? Okay, looks like we're going to be waiting on bated breath, Mr. Tonelli, until our next
Wow, I thought everybody was going to
meeting.
say, I want to hear, but okay.
We do, but it's hard
I'm
to
just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm
shrink
kidding.
that
I
into,
know.
bite-sized pieces. Next up, we have Chief Collington with the public safety report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and residents and colleagues. I will be brief this month, Mayor. Just want to make sure I don't belabor the time. I'll just hit a couple real quick highlights. I even wrote myself a script to stick by. I just want to say in the month of March, our officers responded to 882 calls for service this month. And I'm sorry, last month. And I just want to always, again, commend them for doing the job that they do out there, keeping the residents safe. Also in the month of March, we brought on a new lieutenant, Lieutenant Dan Frischkorn. He's a 34-year veteran from, he retired from Tacoma Park. He is now overseeing our operations division. He brings a wealth of information and knowledge and experience. He is a master trainer. So I believe in when we do in-service training, we do training that is detailed for our residents, keeping our community safe. I don't believe in just filling slots to do training, because we have to have 18 hours of in-service credit hours to maintain our certification. So with that, we can make sure that our training is conducive to the residents that we serve. We talked about what the State Highway Administration project, and I did make mention that we were in the process of selecting a traffic enforcement officer who can be devoted to spending a lot of time over, when we have traffic issues, we need to collect traffic data, just to be in that area, spend more time. So I'm pleased to announce that we selected Ryan Harris as the department's first traffic enforcement officer. So I'm looking forward to meeting with him Wednesday. Also, before I came here, I understood that we were in the process of trying to stand up a Bladensburg Police Department K-9 unit. So I resurrected that project, took it on, and I'm happy to say and inform the council and the council and community that we have launched a process to select officers for that, one officer for that position. We did contact the vendor down in Tar Heel, North Carolina, where we purchased the first dog. We do have the dog. The dog's name is Ashton. He is a year and a half old German Shepherd. He has great personal attributes and characteristics that will be good for doing demonstrations at schools and things like that. But he's also a working dog. So I'm happy to let everyone know that will be forthcoming. This week is April the 11th through the 15th is National Public Safety Telecommunications Week. So we do want to take time to honor our dispatchers. And I see Bob McGroy put up 3 minutes. So I'll end it there, that we do want to take time to recognize our dispatchers who, even though the community don't see them, they are the first people that they talk to when they call in, when they're in the crisis. And I can't thank our communications officers enough for the job that they do as well. They are a lifeline for the police officers out on the street. And I'll end it there. And the rest of the information is contained in my report.
Chief, thank you. And thank you to the officers for the great work you guys do each and every day and night. We truly appreciate you. And I'm so happy the K9 project is finally moving forward. So special shout out to you for that. The next report we'll have is
Mayor
the town
James, I have
clerk
a
report.
question. I have a
Oh,
question. for
sorry.
Chief Collins.
That hand got me again. I told you it's fading into the background. Councilmember Rao, thank you for speaking up. Chief, the questions on the floor for you.
Thank you, Chief Collinson, for sharing your report. Residents that have contacted me requesting some breakdowns as it relates to code enforcement and the code issues around parking and around grass as we're springing is coming back up. So if you could share any highlights as it relates to code, any sorts of code highlights that you have. And I want to personally thank you for responding to Ward 1 residents' concerns as it relates to the needs of the community expeditiously. Because I reached out to you for a couple of issues, and I just want to say thank you for making sure that those residents' concerns were taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We always here glad to help the community out. So with regards to the highlights for the code enforcement for the month of March, there were 12 bulk trash reminder notices issued. Code enforcement removed 22 signs from poles, 19 from right-of-way. Year to date, 94 signs have been removed. There were 15 abandoned autos in residential areas, 6 in the business area, 2 in apartment areas, 12 were impounded. Year to date, 76 abandoned vehicles have been impounded. There were no grass violation notices issued. Code enforcement did receive 3 complaints for graffiti, and they did address those. So I can tell you that with Ms. Tamaya Tolliver, our second code enforcement officer out there, along with Mr. Benjamin Moon, as well as our supervisor, Sean Reinhardt. The 3 of them make a good team. They complement each other, and they are very busy out there. So any complaints that our residents have, please send them in to us. We do want to respond to them and mitigate the situation.
Thank you for that, Chief. And I will also just remind the public that the stats that you just heard are part of the code enforcement portion of the monthly reports. And I believe now, Chief, you include them under the public safety report. So on a monthly basis, any resident can go to our website and see that information reflected in the report that comes from the Chief's department, which is inclusive of code enforcement. And as it relates to graffiti, if you read the Public Works reports, there you'll see references to if there were specific areas in the community where they had to go and remove graffiti. So we try to report out on that information on a regular basis. But again, thank you for that question. At this time, we'll proceed on with the town clerk reports.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have nothing formal to report on this evening, but I would say that some of the things that I have been working on and my department will spring forth during our upcoming budget process. So I just wanted to point that out. And also thank you, Mayor, for I heard that Fairfax County shout out earlier. So Team Fairfax here. So thank you. So
on the resident side, let's clarify, only on the resident side.
Touche, valid point.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Charnovich.
Thank you, Mayor.
Absolutely. And next we'll move on to the town administrator. And if you can wrap in Public Works, that would be helpful as well.
Thank you, Mayor. The Public Works Department has, I'm starting the timer on myself, and I'm going to jam these both into 2 minutes. Public Works Department has a written report that is provided in your packets. Note there's some safety issues that are raised there. I also want to note that I'm not immune to responding to performance feedback. And after last meeting, one of the pieces of performance feedback I got was that I failed to keep the department heads to their 3-minute limits with their reports. So I got that from two different parties, and I'm going to stick to that with myself. And the clock is ticking, McGrory, so be advised. With that said, there are two key things that I will need to, unfortunately, nag the council on. One, the draft budget session calendar did not receive action by the council, so you don't officially have a meeting scheduled for your budget work session. The mayor does have the authority to call a meeting, so I will ask the mayor to indulge the staff by calling a budget work session for Wednesday, April 20th at 5:30 p.m., unless the council directs otherwise, or unless we receive some feedback in the interim on a different date or time. And lastly, given the deadline that was set by the state for response for LEOPS, that would require a council meeting, and the council meeting requires 24-hour advance notice. So that would preclude our meeting on Tuesday. So therefore, I will be promptly caucusing the council for your availability for a meeting either Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, so that we can give them an answer by Monday. And I would encourage each and every one of you council members to please contact me or Chief Collington or Mr. Tonelli to talk through any questions you may have about that very dense memo that was received from the State Retirement Board about the prospective entry into the law enforcement officers pension system. And at 1 minute and 10 seconds remaining, I'm going to conclude the town administrator's report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McGrory. And for some reason, I thought we previously had voted on the budget calendar when the dates were first put out there. No? Okay, so let's get through this and then just put that at the end if that's okay. And thank you for the brief updates. Next, we'll move to Councilmember Brown for Ward 1 report out.
Thanks, Mayor. Very quickly, I would like to say that this is signed and died. The Maryland General Assembly is the proceedings have adjourned. Today is the last day, and so because crossover was during the last few weeks in March, so we now know, of course, which bills are dead and which bills are in play. So some of the bills that have been decided upon are climate change legislation, juvenile justice reform, paid family sick leave, abortion rights, and legalization of recreational cannabis industry, of the recreational cannabis industry. And then also, if you all remember, the General Assembly signed and the governor signed a 30-day suspension of the 36 cents Maryland gas tax. So, make sure you fill up your tank. I think that we are still within that 30-day period. So I definitely want you all to go and take a look at the House bills and the Senate bills that have been passed. The Family Leave Act, it's Senate Bill 275. And they also have a House bill on clean cars, that's HB 1391. Water pollution enforcement expansion, that's Senate Bill 221. And the climate bill is House Bill 740. So, there are the juvenile justice reform, that's House Bill 459. So I just really encourage you all to go on to the website, and you can go to mdlegislative.com to read a little bit more about these bills. And I also encourage you all to write to your state legislators, your senators, and your delegates. If you're in the 47th legislative area, in which we are, we have Senator Malcolm Augustine, Delegate Diana Fennell, Delegate Julian Ivey, and Delegate Juanica Fisher. So just reach out, get involved, and find out what these bills mean and how they impact us as Prince Georgians. Thank you so very much. You all be safe, and thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you, Councilmember Brown. Next, we'll turn it over to Councilmember McBride.
Councilmember McBride. has had so many difficulties. Please excuse me tonight. The only thing I have to report is that I've been on various meetings with the farm committee. One thing I do, if the council members don't know, that student lunches are going to be cut out. I believe it's effective as of June, the end of June. You may want to verify that, but the committee is currently trying to see what else can be done, because we know that students within the Maryland area will constantly be affected by not being able to have, and some families really rely upon those school lunches, even during the summer months. So hopefully some things are going to be worked out. So I've been on meetings like every 2 weeks instead of once a month. So hopefully something's going to be done.
Great. Thank you for keeping up with the COG Farm Committee, Councilmember McBride. Appreciate you taking the time to be a part of those calls. Next, we'll turn it over to Councilmember Blunt.
I'd like to say, well, late night, even to everyone. I'm pretty much, it's really to the council, working to get more people engaged in these meetings. I mean, that has been, since I've been on council, we less than 34 maybe, and just trying to get the community more engaged in meetings, whether we offer some type of incentives, but to try to bring those numbers up. Because I mean, just so they can know what's going on. It's like no one, whatever the reason is, I just want to work on the community to try to find out why you're not coming to the meetings. Please attend a meeting. I just want more engagement with the community because we have none. Other than the police department, you'll have a lot, but we have none. So that's all I have to say. But if you have a friend or a neighbor, tell them to tune into our next meeting. Pretty much. That's all.
Thank you. And you said you didn't have a report. Just teasing you. All right, next we'll move on to Councilmember Rout.
Thank you, Mayor James. For the last month, I have been really working with residents in Ward 1 to understand their perspective on the parking issue, as we talked about at our last meeting. So I have surveyed 27 homes. Of the 27 homes, 9 have answered the door, and I'm asking just one question. How do you feel about the parking in our town? All 9 homes that answered their door had stated that they do feel that there is a parking concern. So I have started on 55th Avenue. I went up Taussig, and I am going to be going down Tilden and up Volta. So Tilden and Volta are going to be my next 2 streets that I'm going to be trying to tackle. So if I come, I'm your council member. Welcome. Just answer the door because I'm not selling anything. I just want to survey and speak with you as it relates to the parking issue. So I wanted to report out on that. Councilmember Brown and I have also been talking to address some of the residents' concerns as it relates to parking. So we've been responding to those requests. I have been, the county meetings on the COVID-19 response have been reenacted. So for the last 2 weeks, there have been COVID-19 meetings because the numbers are back up in Prince George's County. We do have a variant that is present in Prince George's County, and it is highly susceptible, more than the Omicron variant, but it is less volatile. So please continue to wear your mask. I know you're not required to, but please continue to wear your mask to reduce the spread of COVID-19. Booster shots are also available to those 12 and up. So if you do meet the qualifications for a booster shot, you are allotted, and there are lots of free resources for boosters, such as local pharmacies in town and outside of town, and the state of Maryland will cover the cost of the vaccination. Lastly, right before I logged into this meeting, I was advocating to Senator Will Smith as it relates to this HB 833, the Safe Harbor Bill, that protects our vulnerable young people that have been preyed upon as it relates to sex trafficking being prosecuted. So that was a very important bill that I wanted to follow, and I reached out. And so they're supposed to be taking a vote tonight. I have not checked to see what was the status of it. Thank you, Mr. McGroy, for getting a second booster. I got mine too last week. I just want to just, those are the things that your council member has been working on. And like always, if you would like to reach me, you can follow me on social media platforms, Jocelyn_Route. And also, you can also send me an email. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Once again, lots going on as well. So the Maryland Mayors Association had their winter conference March 31st and April 1st. And so just given where everyone is right now with ARPA funds, with understanding the economy, the effects of inflation, we invited an economist to come in from a local bank and really give us the financial nitty gritty on things we need to be thinking about as we're budgeting for our cities and towns. So that's why I mentioned before, I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and jump in, understanding what the inflation rate is and some of these other economic impacts and how we can put forth the best possible budget for our residents. As I shared before, the Maryland Mayors Association is one of the sponsors for the If I Were Mayor contest. And so I did take the opportunity last month to visit Bladensburg Elementary's fourth graders, as well as Port Towns Elementary's fourth graders. And one class in particular at the Port Towns Elementary turned the tables on me. I was coming to talk to them about government and just ask questions and get them engaged and excited about local government. And they actually interviewed me before we got into that. So that was pretty sweet to be interviewed by these students who had actually researched me and actually had very thoughtful questions. But anyway, truly enjoyed that opportunity. Also had the chance to attend last month's climate, energy, and environmental policy meeting and wanted to share with the staff, now's the time, the street light and outdoor lighting efficiency program for FY 2022 is now available. And this is to help, it makes grants available to help with replacing outdated and less efficient mounted fixtures in the community. And there's up to $2 million in this award. I'm sure it's going to be competitive, but there's some places in town where I think we could certainly take advantage of this grant. So Mr. Charnovich and Mr. McGroy, I'll send over the information and along with the application deadline, but that was one of the updates that we received from the Maryland Energy Administration. In addition, they talked about the Decarbonizing Public Schools program, which is also a pilot. Given that there's some school construction that'll likely be going on for our middle school students in particular that attend William Word, I think it's a good time to be informed about the funding opportunities and the ways in which they can build the new facility and decarbonize that building. Many don't realize buildings are one of the highest sources of greenhouse gas emissions. And so having sustainable practices and specific things as part of the construction and architecture can actually make your building more green if you get that in on the front end. And then last but not least, the FY 2022 Clean Fuels Incentive Program. I'm excited about this because it's an opportunity for us to green our fleet. And so if Chief Collington wants a police motorcycle for the fleet that is an EV, this is our opportunity to apply for that. We're expanding our services. If there's another vehicle that is needed, Chief, as part of the fleet, again, the whole idea is to really start moving away from fossil fuels with what the town is doing in terms of our transportation. Again, another high emitter of greenhouse gas emissions. So I'll make sure more details are shared with the staff on these grant opportunities that exist right now. And in addition, we'll work to provide more updates in my written report. And so with that, I wanted to check my clock. I think I got it under 3 minutes. I didn't see. Oh, no, Mr. McGrory said that's 3. All right. And then the last thing is wanted to ask if the council in our final agenda item would be open to approving the proposed budget calendar that Mr. McGrory referenced previously. As I said, I apologize. I thought we had already approved that when we first began talking about the budget preparation process and we were putting our dates out there. And so as a refresher, we have, in looking ahead and not counting tonight, April 20th, 5:30 p.m. work session, late April, constant yield advertisement. April 26th is the next budget work session at 5:30. May 9th, FY 2023 budget review at 5:30, which is part of the next scheduled work session. And then May 9th, we would also go into our constant yield hearing at 6 p.m. May 9th, again, the 7 p.m. would be the first reading of FY 2023 budget. Again, it's just the first reading, so there's time to make adjustments. And then B is to approve the FY 2023 tax rate, which is tying into the constant yield hearing. June 6th, since we agreed to move that meeting, FY 2023 budget review again. And then the second reading of the ordinance, FY 2023 adoption, if the council agrees, of the budget ordinance. So is there a motion to approve the fiscal year FY 2023 budget session calendar?
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Councilmember Brown, seconded by Councilmember Rout. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you so much.
All right.
So at this time, that brings us to the end of our agenda. I'm looking at Councilmember Brown. Don't say one more thing. With that, may I have a motion to approve our
Raise my
adjournment?
hand.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Rout. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember
Try to
McBride.
get
Any
out of
further
here.
discussion?
Let's give it a
Hearing-
chance.
Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye.
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 Any nays? The ayes have it. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye. Bye.